everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker Training. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTraining.tv, where every day we are doing FileMaker Training. In fact, today is day 2 of our 30-day training for brand new or beginning FileMaker people, or people who want to maybe spend a little time and revisit the basic training, learn from the beginning. Where every day we're going to start kind of beginning basic, day 1, day 2, and as we get to day 30 or 33 or 34, whatever it turns out to be, the topics will get more advanced. That's the idea. So I've got my FileMaker server here standing by, ready to go. Very exciting as well. Let's cover a little bit just so we have a understanding of what's coming up. If you go to fmtrain.tv is the home location for this site right here. So if you go to fmtrain.tv, you'll see tabs here across the top. The top left one is going to show you the upcoming broadcast schedule. Every day is law and disorder. So today is the basics. Tomorrow we'll start to get into security and server and little bits like that. But today is just very, very, very much the basics of, you know, where to start with in the world of FileMaker, right? We're doing this for you. Okay, to be very clear, I really like training people. I enjoy this, so don't tell everyone, but I love it when people ask questions and I teach them something and then they have that aha moment where they get it, right? And it's always exciting. And a lot of you have gone through that with the FileMaker platform over the years. In fact, when Claris comes out with new features, FileMaker, we sometimes see new things. It's that aha moment. We love that. I personally really enjoy that. So this is the upcoming broadcast schedule. If you want to support the channel, check out the bundles button right here, purchase one of the training bundles, and away we go. Awesome. So real quick, so I'm going to go over here to FileMaker. So today is very much the basics. So I'm going to make myself somewhat smaller. But we have questions. Hey, Megan's here. Megan, I need you to ask questions. So Megan, so officially, let's talk about this briefly. Let's talk about this. I'm going to press the button right here. This is the progression of learning almost anything in the world. These are kind of your business owner, manager people. They don't want to learn FileMaker. They're in a lot of ways your customer, whether they're an external customer or your in-house customer. They're the people that tell you what they want FileMaker to kind of do, or what problem they have and you need to solve it. And then somehow they're also involved with you getting paid somehow. So or maybe you're a nonprofit and they don't pay and they just make demands and you don't get paid. Welcome to the world of nonprofits. So anyway, so that's this group, this person on the left over here, beginning developers, brand new people. When I talked to Megan last year or the year before, whenever that was, seems like a long time ago, she was brand new, had fallen off the hay wagon brand new, and she's much further along now. I assume that she's very much more of an intermediate engineer. However, some of this will be recurring training or reminders about things maybe she has forgotten. I even forget things about the platform. It's good for me to go back. The goal is we start off in training, day 1, day 2, day 3. By the time we get to about day 30, 35, we're over here treading into the intermediate section a little bit. And then at that point, the beginning training is kind of over. And then if you want to learn more about things, send us an email to support@rcconsulting.com, and we can give you a little bit of direction on where you want to go for additional learning. So this is the progression of learning. It's very, very important. Claris has done some surveys and studies on this, and they have different personas. They actually name these people. They like have a William and an Alice and a James and a Sally and a Sandra and a Mohammed, et cetera, and they try to develop against those personas. I keep it a little simpler here for everyone here. So let's talk about the FileMaker platform. So today is day 2. Actually, we talked yesterday about the diagram of all the products and how they fit together. It's such an extraordinary, important thing to keep in mind. This is the important piece that you have to keep in mind. One of these is actually web direct. It doesn't really matter, but your FileMaker server, as you get going, you build your solution. Your FileMaker file lives on your FileMaker server. These people access it, but they don't actually have the FMP12 file. Once again, we're talking about a file like this. This is kind of if you build something like this, it's quite a bit more time, effort, and but this is like a CRM. Customer relationship management. It manages your customers, manages communication, potentially manages orders, invoices, and projects and jobs and things like that. Every business has a CRM somehow. Even if it's just Post-it notes, you have a CRM, a pile of Post-it notes with information on there. So this is a free one that we give away. But let's just start with a brand new file, right? So we have something to play with today. I'm going to start with a absolute blank file. I'm going to save it. It'll be called day 2. And so what I want to do is when I first off in FileMaker, it gives me some automatic fields it defines it thinks that we need. I generally hate the way they set these field definitions up because it makes life potentially difficult for me. So I delete them. So when I start a new file, I start with a completely blank file. And then I'm just going to put, so important thing to understand up front is that you have to design the structure. When you design and structure your FileMaker file, you need to specify the fields that you need to track. When you're brand new to FileMaker, you're going to come in here. There'll be, you won't even know what tables are. Maybe you don't even think about tables. You're just going to go into fields and you're going to say, I want name, address, maybe phone, and maybe a note. So the ultimate basic FileMaker solution, I hit OK. It builds a layout right here automatically. It puts these fields on here. At the top right here, you can see that I have one record. So this is the layout, right? Yesterday we talked about the differences between data and a layout. We're going to continue that conversation right now. So layout. So the layout is essentially the user interface of your design. So the idea is that if you scroll down here a little bit, here's a couple spreadsheets that you'll see. A database engine at the end of the day, all it is columns of data. Ugly data. An Excel spreadsheet is very, very similar to a core database engine. All it is ugly rows and columns of text data. That's essentially what a database is. It holds these things. So you're like, well, then you're saying, well, is Excel kind of a database? It kind of is. It's really a horrible database, but it really kind of is because it stores those columns and rows of numbers, right? But Excel is this idea of visualizing lots of rows and columns of data. A database allows us to take that and to apply it to a layout or a graphical interface that's far and above and way better than what Excel or Google Sheets would use or anything like that. A dedicated product. That's the FileMaker platform. So the idea is that we have data on one side. On the other side, we have user interface, and that's this idea. So let's talk about the modes in FileMaker real quick. So right now, we are, if you go up on our top, you see these modes right here. These are the 4 modes in FileMaker. There are no other modes. There are only 4, okay? Browse mode is your end user mode. This is a mode where you're interacting with the database system as an end user would. If you're doing development, this is like developer mode, essentially. Now, I know this is simplified, so some of you can think about, well, exception to the rule, etc. Trust me on this. If this was called developer mode or build it mode or construction mode, all those words would work for me, okay? That makes sense? Find mode is when you're trying to find data. We'll play with that later. Preview is when you want to preview it to see how it might look on the printer. Generally, when you're in browse mode, it shows you a pretty good representation of what it'll look like on a printer. There are little variations and differences. And when I say on a printer, that also applies to PDFs, because remember, when you output to a PDF, you're essentially printing to a PDF. The same output, the same technique works with physical printers, paper, but you can create a PDF. That's the same thing. So when I say we're outputting to a printer, in your mind, you can think I can print to paper or I can print to a PDF. Just put that in your mind and understand that's very important. So we have data, which are going to be columns and rows of information. And then we have a layout. So if I am in browse mode, I can put Dick. I can say, I want a new record. I have Sally. I want a new record. I want Fred, right? There we go. So I have 3 records. This status toolbar at the top can be shown or not shown, hidden from the end user view if you want. It's a definite possibility. But if I use the little scroll control right here, I grab the arrows right here, I can laterally move back and forth in the records, right? So we are basically, what we've created is 3 rows down here, 1, 2, 3, and I've got Dick, Sally, Fred are the rows down here, but they're graphically in here. So what I can do is I can go to designer mode, which is called layout mode. I can say view, I can go to layout mode. In the future, I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut. On Mac, it's Command B for browse, Command L for layout mode. On Windows, it's Control key, I believe. It's same B and L but it's just a control key. And so as you go back and forth between computers, I will, with my hands, my right hand always stays on my mouse as I'm doing stuff, and my left hand is supporting. It's my support side hand, my firing side hand over here, my support side hand. That's a little law enforcement lingo for others of you, law enforcement. When you're firing side hand, this is a hand with the pistol in it, right? Or if you're an organized crime, you're doing a drive-by hit. Firing side hand is on your mouse. That's your dominant side hand. Your support side hand is going to go. It's going to put extra bullets in your gun if you're in that world, or it's going to hold the control key or option key. So my hand does a little, right, like claw action, and I hit those keys for me. So I'm going to go to layout mode. Okay, here we are in layout mode. Remember yesterday we turned on the stencil to show what it would look like if it was shown on an iPhone. The stencil's right here. That's that yellow indicator. I'm going to come over here to the stencil, and I'm going to shut that off, although I could set it for different size of phones, different size of iPads, or different desktop computer sizes. Pretty handy dandy. These are the fields right here that we defined, and FileMaker just threw them on the layout for us. We could decide that, well, these address fields are important, or maybe we don't even want them on here, right? Maybe I delete address field, but I want to make this one jumbo size. Now, as I make this bigger, is the text bigger? No, some of you understand what we're looking at here. This is the name field, but I can make the font bigger, right? I can click that. I can say format. I can say size. I can say font size 72. So now it's giant, big like that. Now, when you're in layout mode, it's very, very important, and we're going to cover this real quick, is that we have a set of helper panes that pop up. The left pane, right pane. So you can see the pane over here. I say hide and show, hide and show, hide and show, right? When you go to layout mode, most of the time, these will pop out for you. If you don't want to see them, you can push that button and hide them. And so what happens is that when you're in browse mode, those panes are not part of browse mode. These are basically, they're giving us the tools we need to click over here, drag something, draw something. I want a box. It does this. The box is blue. The box is red. I can press a couple things in here. I can bring up some extra options right here, right? I can say I want a fill color of red. And so now we have this red thing that goes right here. So you have unlimited flexibility. Now, to see how it will look on your user's computer, you're going to go back to browse mode. You can say exit layout mode. Claris put this up here for people who were brand new. But at the end of the day, you just need to understand that you're going to be bouncing back and forth to browse mode or to layout mode. Which one do you want to see? And so I'm going to say view, browse mode. So there we go. So here we have the top half of Dick is here. The bottom half is gone. There's some formatting issues in here, right? So I'm going to go back. I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut now, Command or Control L as in layout. We're back here. Notice the water wings popped out. Sometimes I call them water wings. Like if you have trying to teach a 4 or 5-year-old how to swim, sometimes they can't swim. So you put these inflatable things on their arms and they kind of inflate. So they sit there and they kind of hold you up. And it's when I first saw this from Claris, it reminded me of water wings for my kids. My kids, of course, are much larger now. They don't need water wings. Layout mode, you see how they inflate and push out from left and right side. Back to browse mode, they collapse in, right? Very straightforward. One good thing to understand about the FileMaker platform, if I put this back to like size 12 or some, maybe they were 13 or 14, and I have it set up like this, and I go, so I start typing in here, Rick and this and this, and maybe a return key and this and this and a return key. I am putting all this data into the first field. Now, what happens is if I click away, it rolls it back up. It's all still here, but it's hidden invisibly kind of, and you can kind of see the little indicators there. Some things are chopped off. It looks weird. FileMaker, if you click in a field, will generally 9 times out of 10 roll it down for you and show you what's in there, okay? We've had customers before who did say like this was their database they built, and they're like, I really need a notes field, but I don't have a notes field, or I need to know their phone number field. There's no phone number field on here. So they would come down here and they would go like this, 707-422-4053, and then you're like, hey, where'd it go? It's gone, right? It's there, it's just hidden. So it's a bad idea to let your end users format the fields in such a way where they hide the data, because they're not going to remember where it went, right? So I had a customer who would do that. Then he'd be down here with some sort of phone field or something like that. and then they put a note like today's note. They'd actually, oh, well, we talked on the phone and decided that we're going to do a bunch of stuff, and they write this whole note in here. Okay, so once again, if you build a solution well for your customer, whether you're the customer or someone else is a customer, they won't have to do weird shenanigans to get it to work for them, right? And so what you would do is you create a notice field. A lot of times when you've seen me go down to Stockton, some of you have not seen this, where I work out with the helicopter maintenance company, I watch how they work with FileMaker, and I see where things work well in the interface, and I see where they do stupid tricks like this to try to get around a problem, and I realize I need to fix that. And a lot of times you have to, it's really hard for me. You have to clamp my mouth shut and sit and watch. When I really want to interrupt, like, oh, well, if you click over here and do this, it'll work for you. But so partly training, but partly to be a silent watcher when your customers are using a solution to figure out what they're doing and how they're thinking. That and the way, how do you get better at this? It's called experience, right? You're just going to get, as you watch users do more stupid tricks with your solutions, they're getting around limitations, you will determine how to do things better. So it's an experience thing. But sitting and watching them quietly from behind, if you can get them not to freak out that you're behind them, right? Some sort of stalker, right? It's really good. It's really educational for you to watch the customer do things. So layouts versus data. So data is under the core. So you manage the data by going into File, Manage, Database right here. So this is where you set up your tables and fields. So what is a table and what is a field? The fields are obviously where it's like a field is like a cell in your Excel file, right? So if I go back over here to my Excel file, that right there is a field of data in it. It has that information in it, right? In fact, really, as you add records, you're adding additional rows. So if you look at this real quick, this is, if you're from another data system or if you're brand new to FileMaker, you'll hear other people refer to not records, fields and records, they will refer to rows and columns. And so a horizontal row here is a record in FileMaker, right? Here's SE Val, Lithonic Industries, and Anchorage, Alaska, right? That's a record. You could easily see that being name and address. In fact, the name, we have name, but it really should be first name and last name, two different fields, right? And then you put those fields in there. Then as you add records, there's record 1, 2, 3, 4. So you start to see how this works. So FileMaker at its core organizes the data. It organizes the data under the hood, and then it presents it to you through the layout you have constructed. It presents the data in the FileMaker file through the layout you've constructed. Important things to note here. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay. So this is my FileMaker file right here, okay? If I close the FileMaker file, this is it right here. This contains, remember we talked about this yesterday, it contains all the structure of the file, the structure being not the data. When I say structure, it's the layouts I've created, any programming I've created, but the data is the user input data, the Sally, Fred, Dick, Smith kind of text data. It's kind of basic, I know, but I have to cover this for everyone. And so this file is right here. It's all self-contained right here. If I double click it, it didn't ask me for a username and password. It could have, but I haven't set that up yet. So right now I'm in that brand new mode where you have brand new FileMaker people learning their first steps with the platform. The file runs locally on their computer, typically without security at all. And the idea is that you can double click it and open it up. And then once again, if you crash the computer, you need to be very careful that you use a backup copy of this. You don't want to forcibly crash FileMaker while you have the file open. We'll talk more about that other days. But if you want to move it, you close it, right? And then you could copy it to someone. So whenever you make a copy for yourself or you make a backup of it, always close the file first. Close it entirely, even if you have to quit FileMaker. Then copy it, move it, and duplicate it. Like I could duplicate it here, make a copy. I'm gonna hit the return key, extra copy. I might put the time in it. It's 13:21 hours about here locally right now. And I maybe save this in a folder somewhere out of the way. Then I could open this back up. So that's how you would make a backup copy locally on your own computer, right? Once again, we're not sharing the data with anyone else yet. It's not on a server yet. It doesn't have any passwords yet. These are the brand new first steps. Now, one of the things that you get into in the world of FileMaker is this idea of what is a table, right? And so we have fields, we have the description of tables. Tables, a database contains tables. A table is a category of data that's going to be input somehow into the system. So if I have a database, say we have a database where we are going to run a rescue database to place homeless dogs and cats who need a home, right? And so we want to place them. So you're going to put the animal into the system. You want to track the people who might adopt the animal, right? You might have some other information there, but for sure, so you have animal information. So you'd want to have an animals, or maybe dogs and cats would be separate, but you would want to have a table called animals, right? If we define that, we would come over here, file, manage, database. So that's Command Shift D or Command Control D. So my fingers have to do the little kung fu action and hit the keyboard down here. So when I'm over here, I can just hit Shift, Command, and D, and it pops up automatically as you become more of a developer, especially some of Megan already does this, I'm sure, but the new people they've hired over there probably maybe is not using the keyboard shortcuts yet, right? And so Command, Shift, D. So you start to learn the essential things with your support side hand. Tables. So here are tables. This is the lowest, this is the core item. So there's this table called day 2. I'm going to leave that table alone. I could actually call it, I guess, people, because remember, it just created a default table, so we would have one. When you create a brand new FileMaker file, Claris creates a table for you just to get you going, right? It's not going to name it probably correctly. So we have people. That's a table of people. Then I'm going to create a table called animals. Now, these are the animals that need adoption and moles. Now, the rub is that here's the question. So we get into animals. Let's talk about this, because this is a good example of this. I say, well, here's people, here's animals. I want to update or change the fields on animals. And so these are the default fields that Claris puts in for now. I'm just going to delete them. So we start off with animals. There's nothing in it. So what do we have? We have the type of animal, dog, cat, something like that. You could have its name, okay, if it had a name like Fido, right, or Fluffy, the kitty. You can have its date of birth if you knew what it was. You could have its, its ID. I'm sure there's a dog. In fact, I know you have these. You can chip your animal, put little secret chips in them, right? And so you can kind of keep track. So if the animal gets lost, someone can scan it and say, oh, this is the animal that belongs to Megan, right? And Megan has a giraffe, a pet giraffe, right? It's about 30 feet high in the air. Megan's probably about broke trying to feed the damn thing. It's huge, but she chips it. So in the event the giraffe gets loose from Wisconsin and goes running across state lines, someone go, who the hell has a giraffe? They scan it with a little wand scanner. It comes back with the giraffe's ID, and it says, oh, that belongs to Megan, right? We can put IDs on the animals. So I'm going to say ID of the animal. Okay, questions? Why did you make the fields? Oh, thank you for that. Why did I make the fields timestamp? Absolutely. It was the default, and I was not paying attention. This gets into an important part. While you're collecting the field names of the fields, collecting the names of the items that you want to track, you have to try to tell FileMaker how to handle that or what's going to be in there. And so we haven't talked about this. Let's talk about it briefly real quick. So we have text fields, we have number fields. So if it's a bunch of text, right, it's pretty straightforward, right? That's like almost the default. If you don't know what to do, make it text. And there'll be times when you can change it later. In fact, FileMaker is pretty flexible. You can change it later if you want. So I'm going to say, let's just say that the ID is always going to be a numeric value, a single numeric value. So I can say that's a number. So when we have a text in here, the text could be one letter, one word, or like 2 gigabytes of text. Technically, I think you could fit in there 2 or 4 gigabytes. I can't remember. It's quite a bit. Or is it 32,000 words or something like that? Anyway, it's quite large. It's like half of an encyclopedia can go into a field. It's overkill. That being said, most people will put a single word in there, or 4 or 5 words, or a sentence. A number is literally a single number, not a number space, another number, or a number and a return. It's a single number. Okay, makes sense, right? Indexes are important. Yeah, we're not quite that far yet with that conversation. There's a couple things in the world of database that really cause confusion, and that is identifying the entities is a fancy word of saying, what are you trying to track? Now, we talked about this rescue animal scenario here, but the idea is to find kind of the people that you might track, the animals. You might have an application, adoption application. So you could be in tables, and you could come over here, and you could say adoption application. And that way, so you have adoption application, you have people, and you have animals. So the idea is to try to figure out when you need separate tables versus when you need fields. It's a tricky concept sometimes to wrap your head around, especially if you're brand new. Megan could probably chime in. Is she getting better at identifying the tables? My guess is she's getting much better at that. And the brand new people are having a harder time. The idea, though, is loosely like if we're going to set up a database for a school, grade school for kids, you're going to have teachers, students, maybe the class they're in. If the point where they're 4th or 5th grade, they start having periods and they rotate, and they get an hour in one location, then they move around the school somewhere else. You're going to have different class, different schedules. So these are the tables that you have to start to identify and track. Ed Burkle, fire marshal, right? So he's tracking buildings, locations, the inspection, the last time it was inspected, right? Because if you think about it, everything in the tables and the fields, it's a reflection of real life. And all you have to do is really sit down with someone and have them articulate to you what their real life scenario is. Quit thinking about it like tables and fields. Tell me, I sit down with the customer, tell me about your business process. So let's say that we sat down with Ed Burkle. Go ahead and hit OK here. We start a brand new file. Margaret, you have a question? Okay, what's the question?
Will having spaces in the field name cause problems later on?
Yeah, it can. Generally for beginners, you don't have to worry about it, but down the road when you become more above beginner and more senior, you can run into integration technologies where having spaces in the name of a layout, not in the data, but in the structure, a space within the structure can be a problem. I try to avoid them in general. Let's talk about this. Let me create another new sample file here. We're going to use Ed Burkle. I'm going to go here to FileMaker. I'm going to say, create a new file. We're going to call it blank. We're going to say create. We're going to call it fire marshal. So this is that law and disorder. This is the law part of it, right? We'll do disorder another day. So we have, once again, these are some fields it puts in here. You can have time fields, timestamps, date stamps when records are input or edited. Once again, I'm just going to delete these out because it's a lot of unnecessary stuff. So let's start with the table. So what are the tables, Ed? We have a property, and a property is a physical location somewhere. So I'm going to say we're going to have a property, or I'm going to just change the name of that. So we have property table up here. We also have probably the last time it was, or inspection. Now, if you have a piece of property, I'm not talking about those of you who have home residences. You almost never have an inspection at a home personal residence. But if you are, say that you're some questionable hamburger joint, we'll call it Ruben's House of Burgers. So Ruben's House of Burgers. So inspections, okay. Then I have inspectors. And so inspections are when we walk through the building and you're looking to see if it's in compliance. And then inspectors are the person that works for Ed Burkle who's going to go in there and do the inspection, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create that too. So let's think about the fields that we have. So on the property side, if I go Ed, what do you track in terms of the property? And Ed would say, oh, I want the address of the property. I want the owner's name, and it would be first and last. Okay, owner's first and last. Create. Once again, you could flesh these out: address, city, state, zip, region if you're in different parts of the world. But some sort of address. You might have maybe a photo, right? A photo of the property. Maybe map coordinates these days with GPS and everything. You'd have GPS coordinates, and that would be probably text, right? Now, here's what's interesting is I just create a photo, but if you have a photo, it can't go into text. You have to assign that to be a container. That's an image. For the time being, we're just going to say container. We're going to hit change. I'm not going to worry about any optional settings. Each of these types of fields, maybe the business that's there, right? Maybe so in the property, we might have the business name, okay? I'm going to create that. How about the business logo? Okay, we're going to create that, but that'll be an image too. It's a container. So on each of these types of fields here, I can click on them and hit options right here. This is the important thing. I'm not going through a lot of in the weeds with these options here. Simply let you know that they are here. They exist. You can play with them. But I'm just trying to get us to the basics of understanding the structure here. So if I say okay, here, now it's created the file down here. I've got Fire Marshal file right here. I've got the one, it puts one record in here. The address is going to be 500 East Brunswick, BLVD, and that's in, say, St. George, Utah, someplace I'm going to have to be pretty soon. The owner's name is going to be Ruben. I don't remember Ruben. Well, let's call Ruben James. How about that? A famous person. And so we have a business logo. Now, someone posted the logo here for me momentarily ago. I can drag and drop it on here. A miracle, now that graphic, that artwork, that photo is now contained within the FileMaker file. So it's actually in here. So if you put a bunch of images into a FileMaker file, the FileMaker file is going to get bigger. That's a whole separate conversation, but just understand that it's not a reference to down here. It actually copied and stuck it in the file. So this is the idea that we have the property, right, of what's there and who's there and whatnot. Then we can have inspections. What sort of fields do we want on inspections, okay? Let's see. So once again, I've got, the problem is I got Ed, and Ed's a real person, so I got to be careful. I don't want to aggravate Ed too much. Ed, be cool with me, okay? What fields do we have for inspections? The date of the inspection. I'm going to come over here and put date field, okay? Create it, okay? I will say type of inspection. It was inspection. See, Ed does fire inspections, but let's pretend Ed, the city government where Ed is at, or the county government where Ed is at, they've had to cut back. So Ed's going to do all inspections, including health and human services, humane inspection for food, making sure that the food is, being refrigerated and everyone's washing their hands. So the type of inspection could be a fire inspection, a sanitary inspection, all this sort of inspection, right? And then we can have notes of what was observed, right? Notes of observed issues. Create, right? Customer notes, maybe, or inspection, other inspection notes, miscellaneous inspection notes, right? There's a lot of things you can do here with this. I can create that. I say, okay, and they're all date field. There I went again, right? So I did it wrong. Notice that FileMaker remembers the last one you did, and it just keeps that. So if you're not paying attention, you get hosed, right? So I'm going to go back to text on that. I'm going to say change. I'm going to go over here to this one, say change. There's keyboard shortcuts here. Once again, I'm not going to do those just yet for us. And this is more inspection notes. So if I say okay, once again, it drops them on a layout. Notice that it chopped off the label over here, so I can go real quick to layout mode, dink, dink. I can grab these items here. I can move them around. I can do all sorts of stuff. I can put this one here, put this one here. It's drag and drop. It is wonderful technology. Now, what I notice is that for the notes, I might need some more room. So I'm going to make some notes here, right here, and then other inspection notes. So we're visiting Ruben. Now the rub is that we get into this idea of relationships. I don't think today is a relationship day, right? This is the basics of what's going on. A lot of people build FileMaker solutions without ever really using relationships. They're very powerful, but you can do quite a bit without it, right? Like here I can say today's date. That keyboard shortcut is command and minus sign inserts today's date, right? So if I can here, I can say insert current date, command minus sign. Pretty cool, right? Insert today's date, command minus sign. Type inspection was a sanitary, I don't know, is that type of inspection? And then we say, well, at Ruben's location, right? And somehow we need to observed issues. We don't have the business in here, but let's just say that we saw rats and bugs, right? Okay. And so that's kind of a problem. Ruben's not going to pass his inspection, okay? Date, type, we don't have the organization here. Now, here's the thing with FileMaker, which is really great about this. I guess we could move forward with this a little bit. I'm going to say new window. I can have on a Mac in FileMaker Pro only, on FileMaker Pro, Mac or Windows, you can have more than one window open at a time, okay? So I can have this window open here. Now notice they're both showing the same data, but I can change layouts to something else. These are different views of information. So I can come over here to the property, and I can see over here the property information on the property layout. I can have the inspections on this window on the inspection layout. I can also then jump over here to any layout that I want, right? Pretty great, pretty flexible. I can have, in fact, I have a property layout. I can have more than one property layout. I can have a property layout with more fields on it or less fields on it. I can have a property layout that's a list view. That's a list view. Very, very powerful. So what's important to understand is that when you're in WebDirect or FileMaker Go, you will only be shown one window at a time, okay? And so that limits your kind of capability, your flexibility on that. It's a single, what we call a single document interface on those devices, right? So you have property, you have inspections. So over here, really we have, this is the property, but this is the inspection to it. So, but I don't really see the business name over here. So I need to come over here and say the business name, okay? Business name over here. And then on the inspection, on the property side, we had a business name right here, right? So if we have business, if we have the matching field on both sides, can we connect them together? The idea of a relational database, having two tables talk to each other, very powerful. So if I can go to this tab, third tab right here, we have tables, fields, relationships, right? And so here we have the beginnings of the relationship graph, right? I can say, well, let's attach, and you can move things around on here. So it doesn't matter so much how this looks. It's just you're going to draw a line. So I have a business name, and I'm going to attach it to the business name. So we've connected these two tables, and those two tables are attached to layout. So a layout is attached to a table, right? For now, we'll leave it like that for now. That's once again, day one or day two. I say, okay, so you have a table. These are called table occurrences. It's called for today a table, okay? And we're connecting business name to business name, okay? And so if I come over here, I have business name over here, right? And so I decided it's more important. I'm gonna try that again. I'm gonna move this up out of the way, put maybe up here. I kind of like it up there. That's okay. Bring this down, put this down here. Just for today, I'm going to go ahead and I click on this part, this layout part right here. I'm going to hit the delete key and get rid of it. I'm just trying to keep things simple as possible. So back to browse mode, Command B, Command L. So browse mode, user mode, Command L, layout mode, design developer mode, okay? So over here, we had the business name. This is Ruben's, I'll say burgers, okay. So we have Ruben's Burgers over here. Business name over here, if I put Ruben's Burgers over here, okay? Now, theoretically, they have the same name, so they should be attached, but we can't really tell if they're attached. What if we wanted to see the address over here? Well, should we have to input the address every time? What if it could do the address for us? That would be really nice. So if I give it a little bit more room right here, I want to drag a field on here, okay? I'm going to drag a field. Which way do I feel I want to drag? How about this one? So I'm going to drag a field down here, and it's going to say, hey, you want a field. Where would you like the field to come from? It knows that this layout belongs to the inspections table, but since I have a related table, I can come down and say, related table. I can, through that relationship, borrow fields, view fields, edit fields from property. And now I have the address. So now what's really important about this right here is that these fields here are local to the inspections table. So this layout is attached to the inspections table. If there are no two dots, if they're put it another way, if there are two dots, you're borrowing the field through the relationship. Otherwise, this data is local to this table. So if I go back to browse mode, the address is there. Now, the reason this works is because the two business names perfectly match, right? If I change the name over here to something else, the relationship is broke. Remember, file, manage, database, relationships. They're cross-connected by business name right here. If they match, then you can borrow data through that relationship. You can see data through that relationship. Very powerful. So you say, okay, so then once the relationship matches again, the connection becomes live. So a lot of times in our artwork graphics, we talk about like a bridge. So you're in this window over here, you're in this window over here, you have to have a bridge for the data to get across. That bridge is the relationship, but you have to have a match on one side to get to the other side. So if I put the word S back over Reuben's Burgers, the relationship will activate, and then this data here will come across. I click 1, 2, 3, click, comes across. What if I change it right here? I say it's not St. George, Utah. I say it's St. George, California. Now I have it, California right here. Over here, you can't see it. Oh, click over here, click on that. There you go. So now you can see it. Remember, I had to click and it rolls it down so you can see it. I come back over here again to this window. If I click out right here, it updated there in real time. So it's a live link. It's a live data link. Okay. So if you change it in one spot, it changes it in the other related spots. This is what a relational database is. It's very, very powerful. Okay. It's essential. Now, keep in mind how many, if Ed was doing McDonald's, right? McDonald's, okay. How many McDonald's are there? And you're doing an inspection. I guarantee if Ed Burkle is in any sort of medium-sized town or larger-sized town, he's going to have 3 or 4 or 5 McDonald's. So if he puts McDonald's, he's screwed because he won't know which one he's working on, right? Because you'll have 5 McDonald's over here. They'll all have the same business name. It's like if you have a relational database and how many Steve Allens or Nathan Allens are there? Steve and Nathan are common names. Allen's it's like Bill Smith. How many Bill Smiths are there? RCC at one point had 2 Steve Allens at the same time and 2 Nathan Allens at the same time. 2 different people with identical first and last names. So this gets to this idea of not using necessarily a business name, using some sort of ID as your key field. Questions?
We just had a question about that hilariously. What if you have multiple businesses with the same name?
Exactly. So that's where we're going with that. So the idea is that you're going to, well, technically you could find a way to make it work. In the world of databases, what we do is we set up essentially, and once again, I'm going to start this off for those of you who are established developers. You're going to say, well, there's better ways of doing this. Once again, this is training for beginners. So if I want to edit, so these 2 windows belong where? To a file, right? They both belong to this file here. So within this file is 3 tables. When you create a table, FileMaker automatically builds a layout for you. So it automatically built 3 layouts for you. So within this file are 3 tables with 3 different layouts, okay? You can add more tables, you can add more layouts, but understand that both these windows live in this file right here. So as I change data here, it's saving it in here. We're not using FileMaker Server yet. That's something we start doing tomorrow. So let's talk about not using the names. So if I go to, so how do I manage the structure of the FileMaker file? So far, we have 2 ways of really doing editing. There's really 3 areas of editing in FileMaker as a developer. You could go to layout mode, right? Layout mode, command or control, layout mode over here. I'm in layout mode on this window. On this window, I'm in browse mode, all at the same time on the same file. How cool is that, right? The other way is to, if you want to add or edit a table, add or edit a field name, add or edit relationship. So I go once again, file, manage, database. Okay, so that's one area. The other one is changing your view to layout mode. So one is kind of like the interface, and the other one's this underlying structure that lives right here. Command or control, shift, and the word D for database, right? Pops this up. We recognize this before. So I'm going to go back to tables. What I need to do is create an ID property. Notice I did an underscore there. That's because some of you asked about a space in the name. Spaces can be problematic. I have spaces up here. Long term, I might just change those to underscores, right? So I'm going to say create a ID that's a number. And as an option, I want it to automatically create a serial number for me. So auto enter. So ID property is a number field. I click options. here are the options. I could put dates in there, times in there, but I want a serial number starting at the number 100, okay? And it's going to increment by 1. So if I say okay, I come over here. There's nothing in here for Ruben because Ruben already existed. But if I create a new record right here, the auto enter option will fire. Here's that record. So we could call it, where's the business name? Taco Bell. There we go. Something I haven't eaten in a long time. I do like it, but it doesn't agree with my waistline. So Taco Bell. Then we have another new record. I can hit Command or Control N as a new. So I'm gonna do the keyboard shortcut, new record. Now it's 101, right? Business name. We can go to the AT&T phone store, right? Mobile store, right? That kind of thing. Get a new phone from AT&T or Rogers Communications or something. So then as I flip the records here, so the first one didn't have an ID property because that field didn't exist at the time it was created. The auto enter options essentially, for the most part, only fire when you create a new record. Loosely just assume that to be the case for now. As a beginner, when you create a new record, say I want to say automatically put the date in that this record was created. Okay, how do we do that? File, manage, database, and then we want to add a field, so that would be under fields. Under which table? Property table. Okay, I would say date, the record was created. And I can say kind of field, you could be text, might be better that it's date. I say create, I say options, and I say auto enter creation date. Okay, so that will automatically create that. Pretty cool. Now, I want to, over here, I had to remember the name and it didn't work because how many McDonald's could you have? So I need to put on the inspection an ID of the property in, right? And so what we have is this idea of keys. A key is the secret handshake that activates the bridge, right? Remember, we have a table on this side, a table on this side, and literally imagine that there's a 50-foot, between two buildings, right? And unless you're like the Matrix or something, you jump from building to building, or you're, Marvel Universe or something, a superhero, you just can't jump from building to building. You need a bridge from point A to point B so you can activate the bridges. And in order to activate, you have to have the matching value. That was the business name. We're going to change that to be the primary key. So I have ID property right here. I need something over here that's the ID property. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to fields. I'm going to go to inspections. I'm going to say ID underscore property. And then what I want to do is I use a little keyboard shortcut. It's a little squiggly F for foreign key. Foreign key tells us that it's a value that really belongs to another table. So it's foreign to us. But then, and I say create that. But then you have a primary key on one side and a foreign key on the other side. As a general rule, as you're learning how to build a relational database, even in other systems, you're going to have a primary key on one side, a foreign key on the other side. So if you go to relationships back here, I can change this. I can double click on this relationship and say, well, on one side, it needs to be the ID property. In this case, it's the primary key. And over here, it will be the ID property. And the little F tells me it's a little reminder to me. It means nothing to FileMaker. It's just a reminder to me that if this is an F, it's foreign key, then that one over there is probably the primary key. In fact, I could change the name. So it says ID underscore property. I can go back to fields and go to property, and I could change the name here. FileMaker's smart. If I put underscore P on there for primary key, and I say change, I go back to relationships, it's already updated it, right? Pretty cool. So once we have that, we say, okay. So now we're back over here. The relationship is broke, right? If I go over here to Ruben, I'm going to put this, move this over so I can see this. I go to browse mode. I have the ID property. If I go forward here, remember they had new numbers were put in. If I have to manually put a key in here, I'll just put 99. It was the one before. But as you create new records, the auto enter will fire, right? So I've gone back and fixed the Ruben original record. I'm going to come over here, and I don't even see the field on the layout. Important tip. If you define a field, it doesn't have to be on a layout at all. It's optional, or it could be on a different layout. So I'm like, well, the field's not here. I don't see it. Where'd it go? I go to layout mode. It's not here, right? So let's put I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a field down here like that. I'm going to say ID. I want the local inspections. I want the foreign key. So this is the foreign key. Then, yeah, pretty cool. That's the foreign key. That'll be the primary key. They'll match together. Now, the other part of this is like, well, why do you have to put the business name in twice? Why do data entry twice? Part of relational database is not doing the data entry twice. So why don't we borrow the name from over here? So all we have to do is have the ID, and then we can have it bring over the address, the name, all the important pieces, so we don't have to re-enter them again. So I come over here to business name, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I don't want the business name over in inspections. I'm going to come over to fields and inspections. I'm going to get rid of the business name. I'm going to delete it because it's extra work. I don't need it. Okay. You're like, you got rid of the business name. We're going to borrow it through the relationship in real time. So I'm going to drag down a field right here. And once again, how this looks on screen and the order of these, completely arbitrary. I'm going to go through the relationship and grab the business name. So I go back to browse mode. So we're over here. If you know the ID property is 99 right there. If you know what that number is, it could, it could be your address from the street, right? Something. Okay. Oh, I did something wrong. What I do? It's a date field. What I do? ID property. Look at that. It's date. Malfunction. If you build something and it doesn't work, you have to go back and troubleshoot what you've done. It should be a number value. I'm going to say number. I'm going to say change. So the relationship wouldn't work because really it couldn't lock a date field onto a number. Okay. I'm going to go just for fun, go back to property and check that one. Number. So it's number there. It's number on both sides. Should work okay. I said okay. Saves changes. I come over here to property. I say 99. It works. Straightforward. Makes sense. I know it's very slow. This is very slow, methodical, but this is the beginnings of the world of FileMaker. Questions we have?
Yes. So would using apostrophes in the business name cause a problem?
Yes.
Like
Yeah,
curly, straight, slants, things like that?
Here's the thing, for a relationship to work, both sides of the key. So if I go once again, file, manage, database, these sides here have to be, for where we're at today, they have to be an exact match. Okay. Once again, a lot of times I'm giving you absolutes as a beginning and or probably intermediate. You could take these to the bank. There are cases where you can get cute with a relationship, but essentially both sides have to be a perfect match. And if they're off by even one little character, one little space, there's no match, right? So the idea is, as we build this database, that we want to, in fact, maybe we use this database going forward, the Fire Marshal database, because I know for a fact that Ruben is going to have violations and he's not going to want to fix the violations. So how does Ruben get around those violations? That's what we're going to be talking about as we go forward in these days.
How did you fill the ID field for Ruben?
I did it by hand arbitrarily. Normally you would build the system, and as you create, notice you create new records up here. Let me just go ahead and put the business name. I'm going to get rid of the top nav. It's just a graphical, we don't have to worry about it. I'm going to move, I'm making room. I'm going to move the business name at the top. I'm going to make it bold. And I just keyboard shortcut for that. And I go back, and then probably the ID property was up here, some sort of important, the essential, the more important things are at the top. Back to browse mode using my hand cut. So I'm layout mode, back to browse mode, browse. Okay. So then over here, it could be, Ford Auto Sales or something, right? So then if I go backwards in records, there's AT&T. So this one is 102. Remember, it's creating them automatically, but I added that field after I'd already created Ruben. So remember the auto enter, this is an important part. The auto enter, it's like I come over here to property, right? The property, and I want to see the fields on property, right? So I can click fields and I can select the table. ID, this is a number field, but it's got an auto enter option. It's auto enter, automatically enter the data into these fields when the record is first created. Okay. Now there's a couple moments where it's more than that, but just from our perspective, when the record's first created, it's going to attempt to do the auto enter. And so I added the field after I'd already auto-entered the record, so it would never re-trigger. That makes sense? You realize you're missing something, you go back and fix it, then you have previous data records you have to hand massage. This came up yesterday from Centauri 272, the order of operation of building a solution. What we're doing right here is what we all have to do. It's what normally happens. You start building something, and you're like, oh, I totally forgot about gee whiz XYZ thing. And you go back and you put it in, then you have to go back and fix the data, right? You add a field that wasn't there before, now you have to go back and re-put that field in. That's the process of building a solution. It's an organic process where you build it, you use it, you go, oh, I forgot something, or oh, someone forgot to tell me something, right? It's so there's this constant mode of developing it, testing it, and then the user's using it. So because tomorrow we're going to set security on this, we're going to post this file to a FileMaker server on the internet, and all of you will be able to open it up and access it, right? So that's the whole idea. So we built something today at Burkle. Will want to share this with his team. He wants to work on that, and so that's what we're going to do tomorrow. Other questions, Margaret?
No questions at the moment. So.
Okay, cool. Well, it's top of the hour, and I want to make sure that we're answering everyone's questions as we go along. We're starting off basics, but this is kind of this idea of structuring data and building basic solutions at the FileMaker platform. So we'll pick it up tomorrow, everyone. I appreciate it. Have a good day. And the recording will be posted. We're still working on yesterday's recording, so about 2 days, 3 days, and we get the recordings posted. All right? Thanks. Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!